Hello folks, welcome to Legacy IAS Academy. In this video, we will be discussing a topic on your India-Russia friendship, historical and strategic journey. See, first how I would start is, I will give you a rough overall idea as to how the relationship was. Then we will get into the detail. Okay. So first and foremost, if I am going to say, let's say about how did the Russia and India relations evolve over time. First and foremost, it was during your Cold War solidarity that was ranging from your period of 1950 to 1991. Okay. The first thing that we will take in here is your 1950 to 1991. During this period, your Soviets supported India on key issues like your Kashmir, Goa. So the liberation of all these places was reflected on the shared strategic interests. And also during the period of year 1971. Now, whatever I'm mentioning, these are like decadal highlights of the things that has happened. All right. So in this 1971 period, we signed a treaty of peace, friendship, and cooperation. This was extremely important for us during your Bangladesh war. Then another phase, if I have to tell, if the first phase is your 1950 to 1991 phase, second is post your USSR disintegration. Post USSR disintegration, which means during your era or your decade of 1991 to 2000, where we had to have a good amount of adjustment that USSR is disintegrated and Russia is there, and we have to recalibrate our relationship to sustain. And this was to sustain initially defense and strategic ties. Then finally, the third phase, 2000 onwards, we will call this as strategic partnerships. Okay, if we are going to call it as a strategic partnerships, is because in year 2000 we signed the strategic partnership declaration. This was very important for us because this brought in cooperation across various sectors. See, up until here, it was largely your defense means here various sectors. So the sectoral approach started. Then, if you see in the present times, especially that is the 2020s onwards, the trade expansion has increased very much. So much so that the bilateral trade hit a record high of 65 billion in your 2023. This is the record high. And also, we see that India's exports, because we're speaking about trade, India's export increased to about 42.7%, and imports declined from 39.9%. Okay, and if you see, we still have a huge dependency on your Russian oil, right? Now, because I was speaking about exports and everything, if you see what are the key exports from India, this would be your pharmaceuticals, organics, chemicals, machinery. Now, at the same point of time, if you start thinking what are the imports, first and foremost, because of our huge dependence on oil, fertilizers, minerals, right? And also one important significant event, see, the whole point I'm trying to convey here is we're trying to set the narrative here before we enter into elaborate aspects. In October 2024, India and Russia convened their first working group for your northern sea route. Understanding? So this is one such thing where we have started from 1950 to your 2024. So if you say something about India and Russia, it is a time tested friendship. Yes, especially when India was transitioning from colonial mentality, that is under the colonial chains, it was transitioning into a period and era of independence. And at this point of time, when your West, that is your USA, was siding with pro Pakistan, your Russia was, or your USSR at that point of time, was the one that had our backs. Understanding? And see, presently we know that Donald Trump has levied huge tariff wars. He is trying that tell that Russia-Ukraine war is funded by India, so much so that many people on the West also call it as Modi's war. This is nothing but one form of their tantrums. West always cannot be reliable. That is one thing established. So amidst all this unpredictability or dependence on West, It is always, to quote from our Prime Minister Narendra Modi during one of the BRICS summit, one old friend is always better than two new friends. This is applying now for us better. Understanding? So now if you see what are the early phases of your Soviet era. Now look at this. The first thing is your 1947, when diplomatic ties were established, when we got independence ourselves. Then we started with the non-alignment policy, especially your post your Second World War. We entered into the Cold War era. Look at this. In this Cold War era, we had to, the world was put into bipolarity, USA and USSR. At this point of time, it wouldn't have been wise for India to pick sides. So we picked NAM, right? Then comes our 5 year plans. In our 5 year plans, especially for industrialization, USSR helped a lot with respect to technology transfers. Yes, and in 1955, with your let's say the issue about Kashmir was becoming more and more a centralized element, where it should have been bilateral, where your Pakistan kept dragging it to the international podium. Your USSR backed India's claim on Kashmir. Your 1960s decade, if you see, it is the decade of building trust, especially during the 1962 Indo-China war. Even though India had maintained the concept of neutrality between your USA and USSR, we slowly were tilting towards your USSR because of how your West was trying to treat us and how USSR was having our back. And especially in your 1965 Indo-Pak War, USSR was also instrumental in mediating peace between India and Pakistan in your Tashkent Agreement. Alongside that, we had good amount of military support with them, and they became one of our trusted arms and weapons in order to, because 1962 war was an eye opener that India had to be prepared. So this became a very important aspect for us to think about, and for this aided was your USSR. And alongside this, the machinery, industrialization, etc., were again added through your support from your USSR. The 1971 became a turning point in our relationship. That is turning point in India USSR or India Soviet relationship, which came in the form of Treaty of Peace, Friendship, and Cooperation. Or otherwise, the difficulty that India faced, let's assume this is Western Pakistan, India, Eastern Pakistan. Your USA had sent, okay, USA had sent submarines. USA had found all possible ways to threaten, corner, and bully India. At that point of time, the one who came to back us was your USSR. See, problem with the West we have always been having. Backing from USSR also we have had considerably. At this point of time, during your Bangladesh Liberation War, the Indo Soviet Treaty was a very big way for us to guard our oceans. This signed a defense and political cooperation that was to come in. And another thing is, this cemented the India and USSR partnership. A new era was to usher. From now onwards, that is post 1970, era was going to usher between your Soviet and India relations. How first and foremost your USSR started supplying your MiG fighters for us, tanks, submarines, and also with respect to our nuclear power, they helped out with respect to your Kundakulam nuclear plant, and also they started assisting with nuclear collaboration. And with respect to trade also, the rupee ruble exchange started, which will avoid your forex pressure. And also presently also, if you see the alignment with respect to India, China, Russia, so we have your RIC, BRICS, understanding. With this, once they announced they're trying to move away from dollar or de-dollarization, try to settle in Indian rupee, yen. So all of this, even present times to your 1980 times, it is almost like the same story we are telling with changed narratives, right? And also this period we see 1980s decade, we could tell it was the more of a peak of Soviet India relationships. Well, Indian students were studying in USSR, and student exchange programs were also there. Exchange educational cultural programs also kept on happening. So 1980s was a very productive decade in India-Russia relations. Now, before we continue further, if you're someone who is looking forward to kickstart a UPSC civil service journey, then look no further. You have found the right spot with Legacy IAS Academy. Why we maintain our batch size strictly to 40 members limit so as to provide you individualized and personalized attention. We also offer one-on-one mentorship, regular interaction with educators, and also we have daily mains answer writing challenge, and also your prelims mock test series, interview mock test panels. Alongside this, we also offer a holistic current affair analysis, and classes are conducted. We at Legacy IS Academy conduct classes both in online as well as offline mode. For those of you who are working professionals and students, you can avail the weekend courses also. For more information, contact the number given below, or you can even check out Legacy IS Academy website. If you have to know how the classes are for yourself, schedule a demo class either online or offline. Understanding? Now let's come back to the video. Let's go to your 1991 decade. We saw 1950s. Just a small recap up until here. 1950s, we began a mere more of diplomatic relation. Also, this is again a very new phase, 1950s, both for India as well as USSR, because bipolarity, they don't know whom to trust, and even we are also a newborn nation. And when you wanting to pick between bipolarity, we picked neutrality, right? So somewhere your USSR was in, let's say, a hand's reach, but still it was also maintaining a distance, and we were also very, let's say, more of not wanting to put our chips or cards on any nation entirely. Your 1960s phase, especially when India was facing turmoil with respect to your Indo-China war. Alongside that, we saw a large number of our own economic policy changes with respect to our 5-year plans, with respect to our industrialization, and the Indo-China War opened eyes for us, stating the need for India's preparedness in defense sector, and your Soviet came in to offer that role of defense partnership. 1970s, what here is largely defense. 1970 cemented our relationship for security, for friendship. Understanding? Compared to here, what we picked as neutrality, here we had a tilt towards your Soviet, tilt towards socialism. A former prime minister has always, Jawaharlal Nehru, has said that he would favor socialism, so that became stronger here, his version of us moving towards the socialism. 1980s period, this started with respect to your people to people ties. Alright, so this is how it was during your 4 decades journey. Now we enter into the 1990s decade. One of the things about your 1990s decades is collapse of your USSR. With the USSR being dissolved, bipolarity ended, and USA was trying to become the hegemon. Amidst this background, India also had certain changes. Yes, USSR dissolved, the bipolarity became unipolarity, US hegemony was there. Alongside that, India's economy, India's let's say situation in the home itself changed. How this, we had LPG reforms, same 1990s era. And slowly, because of this, we had to open up our economy, and we moved towards your globalization, which means your USA. And also at this point of time, we were looking for your arms diversification. Russia itself was in crisis, so we had to look for new suppliers. Here, new suppliers would be your France, Israel. Yes. Despite this turbulence, yes, now USSR is disintegrated, but there remained Russia. So we had to reaffirm our friendship with our 1993 treaty in order to beat this odds. Then we enter into the era of 2000s, that is decade of 2000s, which is a strategic partnership era, wherein Putin visits India, and also India's Russia strategic partnership is declared. As of now, we have entered into 25 years of this milestone. And also in 2010, we upgraded India and Russia relationship to special and privileged strategic partnership. As of now, we are celebrating 15 years. Then defense for cooperation, wherein we became from purchasers to co-producers with respect to BrahMos missile, Sukhoi jet productions, and aircraft carriers, right? And we also ventured into the space with respect to your energy space, Kundakulam nuclear reactors, procurement of oil and gas deals, satellite collaborations, astronaut training. So this went ahead. If you see the present day, almost majority of our defense supply comes from Russia. A large amount of energy share with respect to oil comes from Russia. And also we have entered the landmark deal, highest ever with respect to trade in India and Russia relations. If you see with respect to the present geopolitical scenario, first and foremost, India has to do a very well balancing act right now, is because we have two things. See, first and foremost, yes, India was leaning towards the West, especially with groupings such as Quad. But what happened was, India always is in the form of balancing act because it knows that your West cannot be trusted easily. Your US cannot be a more bankable ally because if any interest USA serves, it is self-serving interest only. So keeping that in mind, India was always cautious of this, and yet it formed organizations such as your BRICS, SEO with Russia, China, understanding G20. So India was trying to be the voice of global South. And at the same point of time, we were trying to manage a relationship with the West also. But presently, our US President Donald Trump has put more tariffs and more, let's say, implications for India more than any other country. When your Russia entered Ukraine war, US President Joe Biden entered the war thinking he could hit Russia. Yes, Russia may not be USSR, but it is still Russia. And so much so that the next US President Donald Trump has claimed that, and many of his trusted aid advisors, etc., have also been claiming these, such as your India or your India's purchase of Russian oil is the main reason which is funding the Russia-Ukraine war. So they have slapped additional tariffs on India, additional 25% tariffs, so tariffs amounting up to 50%. So which is putting a huge dent on India's trade. At this point of time, when your US is putting so much of issues with respect to trade, your Russia said that if US doesn't open doors, then let it come to Russia. The same thing China also said. So despite this, your Russia is trying to back us and we are trying to back them, because again India stands for one thing: we are serving our national interest over your geopolitical concerns, understanding. And your US, if you see, your US is claiming that India is the largest procurer of energy from Russia. No, it is China. But it doesn't have the energy or guts to, let's say, impose tariffs on China. It is trying to do nothing but bully India. Understanding? So, with this, we have understood that your West cannot be a reliable partner. Your West cannot be banked on, and we cannot just survive with some concessions that they may give or may not give or keep changing at their will. We need stronger multipolar world where we need regional strengthening. That can be seen in the recent SEO summit. Alongside that, during a 2024 Indian Prime Minister's visit to Moscow, that is in July 2024, when he visited, both countries outlined the need of India Russia special and privileged strategic partnership, and to increase and boost the bilateral trade by 2030. They have also held that energy security is the cornerstone, and India has leveraged Russia's pivot to Asia for reliable energy access. As of now, Russian oil accounts to almost 35% of India's crude imports. And also, with respect to defense cooperation, we have become from buyer to co-developers. And alongside this, when I say buyer to co-developer, more of your India's Make in India initiative, alongside production of your high-speed electric trains, etc. All this comes under your joint production. And we have also tried to go for economic diversification beyond energy in the form of technology, agriculture, manufacturing. We've also tried to bring in your rupee ruble trade mechanism in FTA negotiations. Eurasian Economic Union also will be trying to reflect this. At the same point of time, we are also trying to move towards the connectivity to reshape the global trade. The Russia connectivity project like International North-South Transport Corridor or Chennai-Vladivostok corridor, which will bypass the traditional routes. And through this, it will reduce the dependency on volatile maritime checkpoints. Uh, if your INSTC comes into picture in a well-versed manner, then it will cut the shipping time as much as 40%. Then when we bring the Chennai Vladivostok corridor, then this will reduce the transit from 40 days to just mere 24 days. And also with growing technology, space collaboration, partnership on GLONASS satellites, and also India's renewed interest and commitments with respect to lunar and human space missions, right? So if you see the reasons why they became good friends, it is on all the factors: strategic factor, trust factor, cultural linkage, defense, energy, global forum. Yes, but if you see with respect to the challenges, one is balancing ties with the West and Russia. We discussed that. Another thing is managing the trade deficit. Another is your financial logical challenges also, right? And with respect to trade diversification, with respect to IT, agriculture, pharma sectors, and bringing more of energy corridors, bringing more of defense co-productions, and trying to be on the lines of your global South leaderships. So at the end of the day, if we have to see, Russia is more than just a partner. We have historical ties, strategic ties, we are time-tested friendship, and we are resilient to US tariffs, your Ukraine war, China factor, because at the end of the day, friendship tested in crisis becomes stronger in future. That is the word we will end with for your India Russia relations. With this, we've come to the end of the content. If you like our content, subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it along with your friends. Thank you.